too kind altogether, thank you. As you came in, you were given some papers with the order paper, and I thought I would make these available to you for information to assist in our reflection upon the exercise of the office of Moderator of General Assembly. The first page you have simply sets out, as was explained to me when I started, what the roles and functions of the Moderators of General Assembly are. And you see 4 principal points: to represent, to preside, to rule, and to lead. The very back page provides a statistical summary of all the engagements that have come my way. This is really to aid a realistic understanding of what we ask people to do, and I pass it on to you simply for information. The intervening pages contain 6 months by 6 months, a summary, sometimes rather obscure, list of engagements and a half-yearly summary of the mileages and so on. All this is nitty-gritty stuff. But I have to say to you that the contents of this document have defined and dominated my life for the last 2 years. And I decided to make this available to you in this form at General Assembly because we are in a time of transition as a church, and this includes the way we are evolving the office of Moderators of General Assembly. So I have 3 purposes in giving this information to you. First of all, to give an account of my stewardship. Secondly, to provide the raw data necessary for any evaluation of the moderatorial office. And thirdly, to facilitate some reflection upon how we expect our moderators to fit the moderator's duties around what they already do. And I have to observe personally, as a retired minister, that I would have been seriously challenged had I also been expected to sustain the day job as well. Some main impressions gained from my 2 years as your pilgrim moderator. Given the fact that religion in general, and churches in particular, have been having a hard time, that we've been deluged by dismal statistics and analysis, I wondered if I'd end up my 2 years thoroughly depressed and miserable at all that I was going to see. Well, here I am, exhilarated, excited, invigorated, inspired. What a program you've enabled me to pursue. What a pilgrimage you've given me. The listing you have reveals, among other things, visits to chaplains, working in higher education, in the world of work, in the armed forces, to the general assemblies of some of our partner churches in the United Kingdom, to political party conferences, and of course, my joy and delight, to local churches. Local churches are also very different, gospel-based and Christ-centered in a whole variety of ways. It's immensely attractive and inspiring to see. Children seem to be almost everywhere, sometimes in their 2s and 3s, sometimes in their dozens, and sometimes even worse. Young people, nearly always present, often very upfront, nearly always positive, occasionally a little reticent. Ethnic diversity varies region by region, but it's joyfully inescapable that we are a racially and ethnically diverse fellowship. And I found that some churches have older people too. Or at least they do when I walk in. Many of my visits have been to local ecumenical partnerships. It's a thriving, substantial, and endemic feature of our life. If there's one disappointment, it's that there has never been, in my 2 years, a meeting of the Fellowship of Church Leaders throughout the United Kingdom, despite my request that such a meeting take place. I've never met my counterparts in leadership in the churches of the United Kingdom, except incidentally on other grounds and on other people's agendas from time to time. As one who's always met my ecumenical counterparts in possibly considering a call or a new role, I find this an extraordinary vacuum, inexplicable. But local churches have proved themselves to be dynamic in an infinite variety of ways, and there are generally two elements that I've identified that seem to make for good local church. One is a sharp local focus. You know your local community, you're clear about the specifics of your local ministry. Sharp local focus. The second thing, a large world view, very definitely, consciously, and visibly world aware. I think these two things go to make a good local church. Pause for thought.
Thank you, John. Now, not that long ago, when you had recently been to Zimbabwe, you shared with several of us your first-hand impressions of that visit. And I know it was one of the highlights of your time, and you were very moving in what you said about it. And so I felt it would be good for General Assembly to hear from you firsthand some of the impressions that it is appropriate for you to share in this public setting. So perhaps you tell us a bit about that visit, please.
Yes, there were two elements to the visit organised by Jane Rowell as part of the wonderful programme the United Reformed Church has called Belonging to the World Church. If you haven't been part of that, really consider how you can be involved in it. It is a wonderful gift offering finance, relationships, opportunities, visits, and so on. And I was privileged to be part of one of these to Zimbabwe, invited by the Uniting Presbyterian Church of Southern Africa to their Zimbabwe presbytery and to Christian aid partners and projects supported through Commitment for Life in Zimbabwe. That was the main reason for the visit.
Right. And what impression did you get of the life of the Presbyterian churches in Zimbabwe and the projects you saw?
A mixed and complicated picture. But let me tell you just a story about one church. We went to visit the Presbyterian Church at Lamagundi, a largest rural town, 140 kilometers northwest of Harare. Lamagundi Presbyterian Church has no minister. The Sunday services are attended by some 500 people. A few whites, mostly black. All the leadership is black. A married couple of the Presbyterian Church, a black couple, Stanley, an elder, and Maria, a teacher, decided to leave their jobs in Harare to run the community projects at the church. Don't ask me how the finance worked. I have no idea. It seemed not to. At the church, they have a school. And it seems the school is run on goodwill and hopefulness, giving scores of children daily education in simple, practical things. One of the most fascinating elements of that was seeing how, under Maria's leadership, several teenage girls who had passed some simple exams themselves were busily engaged with these other children and young people, encouraging the prospect and possibility of some simple learning. It wasn't going to get very far in our league tables in the UK, but it was brilliant and perfect for its situation. Not only that, the church provided a school, it provided a clinic. All this is supported in the local church through the Council for World Mission and through the wider presbytery of the Presbyterian Church. This clinic in that whole town is the only medical service there is. There's no functioning economy. There's no Zimbabwean currency. The government is too busy looking after its own affairs to worry about the rural poor. At least that's my impression. But once a week, a young woman doctor called Dr. Makako comes from Harare, and people flock to this clinic to be listened to be paid attention to. They're not going to get cured. Oh, and they raise chickens, and they run after-school clubs, they do sports activities, and they've got a splendid, flourishing wormery, which makes good money. Good Presbyterian church, I would say.
Did you get to visit any of the Christian aid projects out there in Zimbabwe? Many of us have been supporting those for years, and it's difficult to get news of what happens.
Well, it is, and people are doing busy and amazing things. We went to visit the Mashambanzu Care Trust in the township, the very poor township of Highfield, some 10 kilometers southwest of Harare. don't get the impression that I'm an expert in any of this. I just made a short visit, my first visit to Africa. Many here know far more than I do, just my impressions. But visiting the Mashambanzu Care Trust, which was founded in 1989, run by a Catholic sister, Margaret, and a team of staff and volunteers, Commitment for Life contributes funding through Christian Aid. And this project in this Highfield township has an orphan outreach program embracing some 2,400 children. They simply think big, they have to. Many of these children are AIDS orphans. And there's a feeding program reaching 17,400 people, doing a very great deal with the help and support of Christian Aid. Again, it's a case of doing something remarkable with next to nothing but boundless hope and practical application. We went in the Highfield high-density area to visit a group clinic in a shabby rundown hall. Some 40 or 50 people crowded into the hall. There were hymns, there were prayers, there was singing, there was delight and joy, but underlying it all there was a misery of no health care and of the rampaging effects of AIDS. But this clinic is all the health care they have. We as the visitors were introduced and given a table to sit at. There were two other tables, one for a diagnosing nurse and the other for a dispensing nurse. Medically, it was hugely inadequate and insufficient, but it was what could be offered thanks to the Mashambanzu Care Trust and Christian Aid's funding with Commitment for Life help. People went in turn to the table of the diagnosing nurse and then to the dispensing nurse with precious little to dispense apart from kind words. And then they came to our table to tell us their stories. One elderly man came with two little girls, his grandchildren. They have AIDS, he said. Their mother died from AIDS. Their father died from AIDS. My wife died of AIDS. There's only me to look after them. What else can I do? The two little girls cuddled up to him. But there are people who couldn't even get to the clinic, and we went on one of the home visits into the kind of poverty that we perhaps would thankfully rarely experience, but which is all too common in some of these areas. And we went to visit a patient called Maureen. Maureen was too sick to get to the clinic. She was dying of AIDS. We went deep into the shabby poverty of Highfield's hovel homes to see Maureen. Here was a woman alone, dying of AIDS. All her family died of AIDS. She had nothing, there was nobody. She couldn't possibly afford to rent one of the grotesque shacks that serves as houses. She'd been living under a plastic sheet, supported by a few sticks, on the side of one of these hovels. Her shack had burned down, and she was left in the open. Her next-door neighbors, a young family, had immediately, unhesitatingly, invited Maureen into their shack. We sat on her shelf, perhaps part of an old door, the only bed in the one room the whole family had. Of course, they let Maureen have it. She was ill, she was dying. The visits by the nurses from the clinic, supported by funds from Christian Aid and Commitment for Life, were her only comfort and solace. Maureen simply said, "Thank you for coming to see me."
John, you talked to us that afternoon about the different places that you stayed in. Can you share with us some of those contrasts, please?
Briefly, yes. At the beginning and end of our stay, about a 10-day stay, we were to be accommodated in a 3-star hotel in Harare.